The prisoner's dilemma is a classic game in game theory, and it can be used, as we'll see, in when applied to politics in both domestic policy and foreign policy. The basic premise of the game is that you have two people who are apprehended while in the process of trying to rob a bank. And while the police don't have enough evidence to necessarily convict them outright, they separate the two conspirators in different rooms and they make each one an offer. If the person stays silent and they happen to have their other friend rat them out by saying that they were in fact trying to rob a bank, then the other friend who did the confessing or ratting will not be charged as a perpetrator, but as a potential criminal, but as a witness, and so will get 0 years in prison through a plea bargain agreement. However, the person who remains silent will get 10 years in prison. If both wind up confessing, however, they each get 5 years in prison for making the police's time more valuable by, just admitting, hey, look, we did it. We're sorry. We'll take the consequence. And so for their honesty and for saving a lot of time and investigation in the prosecution, they're offered a deal of 5 years. If both, however, stay silent, what they don't know is that the police don't really have enough to hold them. Maybe they figure that out, or charge them on bank robbing and get a conviction. And so the most they'll get is a 1-year prison sentence on a lesser offense. This basic problem is one of the most popular games in game theory. So the question is, what choices should you make, or what are the ideal choices to make in this scenario? So as we look at this grid, or matrix as it's called, this payoff matrix, what we see are the arrays of players. So we have player A here, and we have player B here. And so as we look at that matrix, we can cross-reference the payoffs that each player gets. So in this case, the payoff on the left belongs to player A, and the one on the right belongs to player B. And so if both choose to confess, we know that they get 5 years in prison. Okay, so that's one outcome. So if player A chooses to confess while player B remains silent, player A manages to get 0 years in prison while player B serves a 10-year sentence, and vice versa down below. If player A believes in honor among thieves and remains silent, while player A's friend rats him out, player A gets 10 years, player B gets 0 years. And then there's the possibility both stay silent, realizing that they don't have enough evidence to keep them convict them on the 10-year or the 5-year charge, and they both get 1 year in prison. So when I asked you to take a look at what you choose, many people choose immediately to play silent. And while that's great, the question you have to ask yourself as you apply this is, if you're only playing this game one time, do you trust your partner enough to put your life into that person's hands, so much so that you believe there is no way at all that your friend would rat you out or defect from cooperating with you? And so here, if you only had a chance to play this one time, one approach students take, or many players take, is that they choose to remain silent. The problem is you cannot necessarily trust that your partner is going to do the same. So this outcome, while great, may not be all that possible. So one of the other ways of approaching this would be, do I have a way of enforcing that agreement of silence between us? There are sometimes that's possible. There are some enforceable agreements or versions that would change this. However, in a lot of cases, there is no enforceable agreement. And so what happens is that it just comes down to trust. But ultimately, all you have is trust. There's no other enforcement mechanism between your agreement. So, in this case, one strategy might be, knowing that you're only playing this one time, one strategy might be to try to stave off the worst possible outcome for yourself. Now, what is the worst possible outcome for yourself? Well, if you're player A, the worst possible outcome would be 10 years in prison. If you're player B, the worst possible outcome is 10 years in prison. The best possible outcome is 0 years of prison. Now, the best mutual outcome would be this or this. That would be second place mutually. But personally, the best outcome is 0 years in prison, and the worst outcome is 10 years in prison. So in other words, how do I prevent the worst possible thing from happening to myself? Well, if I stay silent, that is a possibility. That enters into the realm of possibility. Is there a way that I can eliminate this worst possible outcome from happening to me in this array of choices? Well, yes. I can eliminate staying silent. And if I'm player B, I can eliminate staying silent. Now, this also eliminates the best possible outcome for me. This will also eliminate our best mutual outcome. Yielding this outcome, where we both get 5 years in prison. But by choosing confess, what have I done if I only have one version of this game to play? Well, I've eliminated spending 10 years in prison, but at the same time, I've also eliminated this. So, this is one of the conundrums of Prisoner's Dilemma. So, if you realize that if you only played this game one time, and any agreements that you may have made with your friend before you rob the bank, like, hey, if we get caught, don't say anything, honor among thieves, we go way back or whatever. Ultimately, those agreements are not enforceable, so there's no one who can make sure that you live up to that bargain. And so you have a very troubling scenario. And so we'll take a look exactly at how this may change in a variety of scenarios.